Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. When I was a boy, my mother told me many things, but among all those many things that she told me this. When I was telling her a story that a friend of mine told me about someone else, some of our friends, and my mom said, well, be careful that if that friend of yours talks about the other person the way he talks, he might talk the same way about you to others. So be careful. I said, okay, well, in this case, I remember this by reading two articles actually about Zelensky, who Zelensky plays now in these two articles, plays as if he was so sneaky and smart, and he outsmarted and fooled the Russians. And it's about the Minsk agreements that he says he reported here in an interview. He said that he didn't want to implement the Minsk agreements, and he derailed it consciously. So on top of that, Merkel and Macron and Putin were stupefied in one meeting when that he said, well, actually, I don't really care about this, but now it's kind of like too late for you guys because we've been dragging our feet for about 7 years now. And this guy said, well, why did you make us waste our time? I will get into detail with the two articles, but I just wanted to make like a little summary. And the point is, if Zelensky did this to Putin and he did this to the Germans, he can do the same thing to the Americans and again to the Germans and the Brits and again to the French. The same. If this guy has this kind of trait, if you think that he was smart doing that, that smartness is he's gonna turn it against you whenever he feels beneficial to his interest. So let's see this article here. It comes from Sputnik, and it's from 11 hours ago, which is the 9th of February 2023. And it says, Zelensky admits he never intended to implement Minsk agreements. Yeah, oh, he's with a tie. Still like a clown anyway. So, Volodymyr Zelensky admitted that he has previously told German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Emmanuel Macron that the Minsk agreements were impossible and he did not plan to implement them. And I'm quoting, as for Minsk as a whole, I told Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel we will not be able to implement it like that. Well, if you told Emmanuel Macron and you've been present for 2 years or so that means it was something very recent. What happened from 2014, 2015, Minsk 1, Minsk 2, until you came to power? Nobody implemented it? Dragging your feet? And again, you showed up, and instead of saying that, I don't know, let's see. According to Zelensky, he said the same thing to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, and the first and last meeting with him in the Normandy format 2019. I told him, and I'm quoting, the same thing as the other two. They were surprised and replied, if we knew in advance that you would change the meaning of our meeting, then there would be problems even before the summit, Zelensky added. So he actually screwed all three of them. All three of them. And why do you think he was capable of screwing Germany, France, and obviously Russia? I'm just trying to ask a question. Is because he had other masters that he afforded to upset France and Germany, but he couldn't afford remember, Great Britain and the United States were not signatories of the Normandy format, so those guys stayed outside. Why do you think it's so? Even though they could have come in and signed. Remember what Victoria Nuland, the Undersecretary of State under Blinken right now, when it was the 2013, I think it was in October or November, when the Maidan thing, the coup d'etat started in, I think in Ukraine, and it was the whole thing with the Viktor Yanukovych, the democratically elected and legitimate president of Ukraine. What Victoria Nuland spoke with the then U.S. ambassador in Kiev, and he said, "What about the Europeans?" And Nuland said, "The Europeans, they don't matter, they don't care." So when she said about Europeans, she didn't mean Great Britain necessarily. She meant those two weasels that are just kept as fools. So this is one article. Let's go to the other one. The other article is like this, from the same source, and it's just it's more information on what happened. Zelensky takes credit for derailing Minsk agreement. The Ukrainian president claimed he personally refused to implement the deal for peace in Donbass. Why? Because from 2014, 2015 until 2019, 2020, they were arming themselves. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky personally refused to implement, we already know that one, Minsk agreements, a roadmap for peace in the east of the country, which was co-sponsored by Germany and France. That is, they were guarantors. That means that this is the way it works in the United States of America. If you don't have a good credit, or you are a recent immigrant, like I was. When I came here, I didn't have anything. I mean, it was like, okay. And in order to get a credit, like credit for something, like a credit card, or to buy a house, you can't buy a house with, I don't know, $150,000 cash. It's very hard to save that money, or $200,000 or so on. The same with the cars. So you take credit, you take a loan, you take a mortgage. In order to get a mortgage, you have to have a good credit. You build a good credit, being employed, having a good income, having a long, stable address, the same address, a few years, having a steady employment. As I said, this kind of thing. And you be a good payer. Show that you paid your, rent, your apartment rent, and so on. Then they will give you a little credit here and there. And then after a year, your credit improves. And then you can get bigger loans and so on. And then you can ask for a mortgage. Now, if you don't have a good credit, or if you are at the beginning and you need to buy something that you don't have the money cash on you, then if you have a friend or someone, it's called a guarantor, let's put it this way. And that person comes with you at the bank, and he stands for you. That's how it's called. It's standing for you. I can't remember the term. Anyway, he guarantees that if I don't pay the loan, the monthly payment for the loan I'm taking on my name, he's also on the loan. And if I say, I just get the thing that I buy, and he's gonna pay. So he's gonna be, he's like this, France and Germany. They came as guarantors and say, you know what, we are here, and we're kind of like guaranteeing that this weasel called Zelensky will implement Poroshenko before him, because he signed these Minsk agreements. But if a country signs an agreement, it's not the president who signed it, it's the country that gets legally bound by that thing, So Zelensky would have said, we're just going to get out of it. But he didn't say that. He said, well, we can't do it like this. He didn't say, you know what, it's zero, let's break it, and now what? And if you do that, then it's another issue of trust. I'm not going to, negotiate with you every week for the same thing when you change your mind. Like, for instance, let's say you have a house and you had a mortgage on it. You can't go every day at the bank, or the bank can't come and tell you every week, we're going to change it. I mean, if you have a fixed interest rate, you can't come and change it unless you have it fluctuating, or open, or however you call it, flexible or something. Then you can't just go every time. I don't like it now. Well, you negotiated for that, and sign one time, and that's it. It's based on trust. Now this guy says, well, I don't think I'm going to do it. Let's do it again. What do you mean do it again? And then after you do it again, you will change your mind in 3 months, and we're going to do it again and again. What do you think this is? I mean, you wouldn't like that to happen to you. If you go and sell something to someone, and you sell it to him, and in 2 weeks he comes back and say, well, I don't like the price, I want to renegotiate it, obviously lower the price. What are they going to say? Oh yeah, let's renegotiate it, because I have time to waste with you. I mean, I negotiate with you, then I want to move on. You know what I mean? And in these Minsk agreements, where it's timetable, things were supposed to be, achieved, done, completed. And the guarantors, like this guy at the bank, had to pay in case I didn't pay, and I didn't pay. Nobody did anything. Why? Because the big masters were somewhere else and telling Ukraine, we train you. They brought weapons, they brought trainers, they brought everything over there because they knew where they were going to go. What do you think? Why would you start training the Ukrainian army in 2015 and up? And it's the Canadians, the Brits, the French, the Americans. He made the admission during an interview with Der Spiegel, published on Thursday, as he continues his tour across Europe. And everybody looks like him, like he's the great Napoleon Bonaparte, general of the French army. It's unbelievable, man. It's a comedy. It's a parody. Zelensky said he viewed the agreements as a, and I'm quoting, concession on Ukraine's part and never once actually sought to implement them. Instead, they were merely used to exchange prisoners with the two breakaway Donbas republics. The president claimed he openly told that to German Chancellor Merkel and Emmanuel Macron and Putin, as I said, in 2019, and they acted surprised. And he says, what's his name? Zelensky says, but as for Minsk as a whole, I told Macron and Merkel, we cannot implement it like this, end quote, Zelensky stated. And again, I'm quoting, I told Putin the same as the other two. They were surprised and said, if we had known beforehand that you would change the meaning of the meeting, that means you're a weasel, then there would have been problems even before the summit, end quote. And Zelensky said, so what are you going to do now? Because I got the Americans backing me up. Are you going to invade? That's coming from me. Okay, the Minsk agreements, originally broken in 2014 and further expanded in 2015, envisioned a roadmap for reconciliation between Ukraine and the Donbas republics of Donetsk and Lugansk. Now, take this is coming from Sputnik, so they will tell only what's the advantageous from their part, their interpretation. Probably if you ask the Ukrainians, they're going to say, no, that's nothing for us. But why did you sign it then? You know what I mean? Why did you sign it? The two regions rebelled against the country's new authorities in the aftermath of the 2014 Maidan coup in Kiev, which ousted democratically elected President Viktor Yanukovych. Ukraine's failure to implement the agreement, which would have seen the breakaway territories reintegrated with the country but retain a special status, ultimately led to the ongoing conflict. Since the outbreak of hostilities in Ukraine, multiple politicians have taken credit for the failure of the Minsk agreements, admitting they were merely a ruse to give Ukraine time to build up its military. Former Ukrainian President Pyotr Poroshenko was the first to admit last year that Kiev never intended to abide by them and used the deal to, and I'm quoting, create powerful armed forces, end quote. I covered that in one of my videos. He was pranked by two idiots, and he is even more of an idiot because he believed those guys. I don't know how he can be pranked like that. Anyway, Merkel, another original signatory of the Minsk agreements, former French President François Hollande, have also since confirmed that this was eventually the true goal of the deal. So they fooled the Russians. And the Russians are supposed to believe them, that let's have a peace process with you, huh? Moscow considers these admissions to be evidence that the negotiations were conducted in bad faith and that the Ukrainian government and its backers had always intended for the Minsk agreements to flop and for the Donbas crisis to be resolved by force. Russia claimed that its military campaign in Ukraine, launched in last February, preempted an offensive plan by Kiev with NATO's help. That's what they say. Ukraine, Germany, and France, and I'm quoting, lied to the people of Donbas as they had a terrible fate planned for them, which Russia prevented, end quote, Kremlin Dmitry Peskov said back in January. And I'm quoting again, Germany, France, and Ukraine were planning a swindle game with the Minsk agreements. Now is payback time, he stated at the time. I think that's Dmitry Peskov. Think about it that if they fooled you this time, let's look at from the Western side. Why couldn't they solve the problem through negotiations? Why couldn't they? I don't think it was a will, a desire. It was about those two regions that could have been at least solved. What could have happened? That's a next move. In the end, it wouldn't have been worse than what we have right now. So that could have be given a try. I don't know. I mean, that was a positive thing under the circumstances. do it, implement it, and what could happen? The Russians come and invade eventually. So you would get again, and you buy time to improve your military like you do, and at least see if that works. But not even that was in the books. Not even that. They didn't even intend to do it. They didn't move forward at all. And then the other thing, you get what you get. Now, from the Russian perspective, these guys lied to us, and now we should go and trust one word this guy tell us? No. Would you do that? You wouldn't do that. So why would they do that? So how can you know what I mean? I mean, being good or bad in this case doesn't really matter. It's a matter of principle. If someone lies to you, good or bad, is still a liar. I mean, white lies, soft lies, and fuck lies. I don't give lies. I don't give a damn about that. A lie is a lie. More or less, look where we got right here, right now. And then to interpret it, it was just unprovoked and the Russians just have imperialistic thoughts. And remember, the thing for me personally as a selfish US citizen, I don't, whatever those guys over there are doing, they do it over there. I have my family, I have my community, I have my city, I have my country, and then I have my global, whatever population. That's how it goes. That's how it goes with you as well. You're not thinking of the, Ukrainians first before you feed your children. And if you do that, I think that's more than abuse. But anyway, just look at it. Do you want the Russians to believe these guys again? Nah, that's not going to happen. So I'm still surprised that sometimes the Russians seem naive. They still yell, that's involvement. You send tanks, that's an escalation, we're going to react. You should have reacted when this guy sent the first helmet or the first bullet. The first bullet to Ukraine, there would have been, you know what I mean? Or at least shut the hell up and just say, okay, that's it, end of the game here. Take the key of my country and my nation. Stop bothering saying, it's an escalation, we're going to react. You react how? The same you react to each and every escalation these guys did, whatever. So Zelensky, good job. He did that to those guys. He can do that to you too, and these guys too, and to me too. So not trustworthy whatsoever. But what do you want? He's a clown. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.